All right, good morning. Just fired up the machine, didn't think about it, just got off the phone with a good friend. The country's in not very good shape. We know that right now. We know that the genocides are going to keep going on outside of the country and inside of the country. The American people have been divided in a big way. They did that with their COVID exercise. So they have divided us and separated us and made us pretty much afraid of each other and isolated us more. As my buddy says, how many people share a fence with a neighbor and they don't even know who the neighbor is? So things are going to be getting really pretty ugly in the cities, and people are going to be rushing to the countryside where they think they can get to know their neighbors, or at least there will be fewer neighbors, and they think they're going to have a chance to surround the wagons. They have pulled the best way they could, dividing us. They gave us a false premise, and they had us divided along those lines, fighting each other. You're going to get the shot, you're not going to get the shot, whatever. They had us fighting over that. So they've done most of the psychological operations to divide the nation. And right now, we have our enemies actually rearing their heads and being quite stand out about it. I mean, they're not hiding the fact they want to kill the white race. That's what they want to do. And I don't like calling us the white race because I think of white as being a racist term, for one. And I like the term Caucasian, Caucasoid better. And I also know that the construct of race is not a legitimate construct. It's not scientifically based. And it's not biblically based either. It's neither. And I've got this wonderful book here, which I cannot find at the moment, which figures. And it actually is a good book. I was put off by it at first, and I didn't want to read it because I'm thinking it's kind of racist. And racist stuff kind of turns me off. I don't like it much. I mean, I don't want to be known as a racist or called a racist. Nobody wants to be called all that, but I don't have it. I don't have it handy anyway. It's got to be down here somewhere. Anyway, but I do have my new book, An Apologia for Christian Identity. It's a short book. It doesn't sell for much money. The fellow is deceased who wrote the book a while back. I haven't been all the way through it. This is okay. I'm so far advanced of it that it doesn't help me very much at all, to be honest with you. It doesn't really help me much. I have been misplacing books so much so I don't give up so easily now. The Origin of Race and Civilization. He brings up the term species and separates the two so that you can understand. And of course, I take it a little bit further to an extreme because apparently these previous species that inhabited the planet, it looks like we might be dealing with them. I don't know what else to say. It looks like we might be dealing with the Neanderthals. I really don't know. I don't know which DNA they came down through, to be honest with you. But we're at a point at which I think it's time that we actually acknowledge the benefits of the Biden presidency. I know you're going to think I'm crazy saying this, but there have been some benefits to having Biden for president. The number one benefit is the wake-up call. So by now, you need to realize that everything I've been telling you for more than a year is more critical than what well, it's more true than what you've ever thought, than what most people think out there. Yes, I've alienated a few people. I've got a few subscribers to the channel, which is nice. It's Monday morning. Let's check in and find out how many we got. 559. It's going up. I met a young lady, was hoping that I could put her to work, but she doesn't have enough stability in her life right now for me to bring her aboard and rely upon her. And I've got some important decisions to make, as some of my certificates for being online are expiring. And I actually thought this morning, gee, my giving psychology away is worth some money to somebody out there. I thought about selling the name of the channel and moving on, to be honest with you. This is a very good book on species and race. You need to understand that we are several different species on the planet, and it looks like we actually came from a whole bunch of different planets out there, to be honest with you. We have the Africans describing their solar system. And they say that they come from a solar system with 2 stars, a binary system. And it turns out that they're right. Don't ask me which star it is and all that, but it turns out that they, who basically live in grass huts or mud huts and don't even have a wheel, don't have transportation, don't have much of an education system, and have invented really no architecture to speak of, they understand their roots better than we do. So I think everybody's got something to contribute. Remember, humanity was all gathered around the tower. But at this point, we need to look carefully at this Biden administration and consider it and count the blessings. The main blessing is the awareness that the United States of America has been destroyed. We've been taken over. This is not the United States of America that you're living in. This is the Babylonian Empire. This is Babylon. This is Mystery Babylon today. This is it's a one world government. The people who dominated happen to be Jewish. I say happen to be Jewish. Most of them aren't believers at all. And when we look carefully at the Jewish faith, we look at their books that were codified about after 400 AD. They didn't write that stuff down in Babylon until after 400 AD. And it was codified before 625 AD. So we've got that 235-year space in which they codified and wrote down Judaism. And, you know, the average Christian out there is running around thinking, oh, Judaism predates Christianity. No, it does not. Christianity predates Judaism. And we have a problem because they have sold us their Bible, the Schofield Reference Study Bible. And in 1965, they produced the version of it, the edition of it that revealed the most of their secrets, so that you would understand they used our religion against us. How much have they lied to us about it? That's a whole nother thing. But you need to realize that they have purposely built the United States up into a welfare state, and they bring in all of these incompatibles to actually destroy us once and for all. So that's what they've done with the Biden administration. And Trump isn't going to take care of this. Trump is actually a member of the same party as Biden is. That's just the way it is. Don't kid yourself. Please stop kidding yourself. Trump's family is an old Jewish family. His family didn't convert to Judaism. It's a bunch of bullshit. But you need to remember, Hebrews were different than Jews. You already know that. You're listening to my channel. What am I doing here? You know more than what most people know out there. I know that already. So the key thing to me is that we've had a wake-up call. That's what Biden has given us. We have a wake-up call. We don't have our republic at all. We don't have the original structure whatsoever. All of our media is controlled. Everything's dictated to us pretty much. The The CIA controls the media. The biggest publisher in the world is your CIA. You need to accept that. And should they be the biggest publisher in the world? No, they shouldn't. What do we need to do? We need to return to self-rule. It's that simple. We need to return to self-rule. We've done it before. We have to do it again, or we will be, well, actually, in my opinion, if we don't return to self-rule, we deserve to be nuked. Yes, we deserve to be pulverized, blown to smithereens, gone completely. My buddy says we have got to be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I'm sure we are worse than Sodom and Gomorrah to a very large extent, mostly because we're bigger. And the other thing is that we've industrialized these evils. I don't think they practiced abortion or argued about abortion very much in Sodom and Gomorrah. I think back then children were so valued. I'm assuming. I mean, who knows? They might have been valued for the fact that we can sell the baby to the neighbor and the neighbor can eat the child. Who knows what was going on back then? Because we know that the mainstream of the Jews today aren't Jews. They aren't Israelites. They aren't Hebrews. They're actually Ashkenazi. They're actually Khazarians. That's about 90% of them. And by the way, the Sephardic Jews, that small group, the Ashkenazi, take action against them too. Early after the founding of the nation of Israel, the Ashkenazi teachers would take out their Sephardic Jewish students and take them on field trips, and they irradiated them with poisonous radiation. Yes, they do whatever they can to harm their enemies. They're doing it to you and I. That's why we have the FDA, which approves all of these substances that are illegal in the rest of the world to feed people. I mean, you've got stuff that's in your cereals in particular that's just flat out poisonous to people, but yet they get away with it, and they actually put it on the box. Yeah, they actually put that stuff is an ingredient on the box. So basically, we are under, I don't want to call it Jewish rule, because it's not all the Jews. And not all the Jews are bad people. There's a lot of good Jews telling us truthfully about what's going on, standing up for us and standing up for other people too. And they get targeted by the bad ones. And if you want to really understand the difference between the good figs and the bad figs, that's what Isaiah calls them. You need to read The Transfer Agreement by Edwin Black. I have a copy in storage. The advantages of the transfer agreement are just profound. The transfer agreement tells you about the good group and about the not so good group. And the fact is that the two groups were vying to represent Judaism at large across the entire planet. So you had two different groups. One group was actually consisted of statesmen, men who were grounded in philosophy and actually were good men, good people. And then you have the other group that wanted power at any cost. And what did they do? They murdered the good ones so that they would be able to take the prize. And they started a deal called a transfer agreement with Adolf Hitler. And that allowed them to take all of those goods and services from Germany. Since they couldn't remove the currency because of the limits that World War I and the Treaty of Versailles put on the country, so all they could do was get steel products, cars, Mercedes, and heavy equipment out of Germany into Israel, or into Palestine, I should say. And so that's what you had. And Edwin Black wrote it's a documentary. he documents the fight between these two different groups of Jews and how they shot at each other, they killed each other, they assassinated one another. Actually, there was only one group doing all the killing. That was the bad group. And that's the group that inherited. That's the group that ended up representing the Jews at large. And we supported them like fools and idiots over here. But we're not too bright. We stopped educating ourselves. I wasn't allowed to study Latin by the Jews at Winthrop Junior High School. They didn't want me in the class studying Latin. Why? Because they knew Latin would have freed me up. I would have understood much more, and I would have been able to compete with them. There are 2 or 3 languages that you should learn before you even consider going to college. And those were requirements before you went to the University in the United States, back when we were a fledgling nation. And you had to know Hebrew, and you had to know Latin, and you had to know Greek. You had to know all 3 of those languages and be able to translate from one to the other before you could go to college. That's what the college entrance examination was. And by the way, the average student entered college at 13 or 14. 15 was considered a little old to go to college. And so you would sit in the room and they'd say, okay, open the Bible up, such and such a book, this chapter, translate it from this language into that language. They would come back and check your work and take a good look at it and say, okay, now we want you to translate this from this language into this other language. So that was the entrance examination to be able to get into the university. Is you had to be able to read. You had to be able to read the original language, so that nobody could lie to you and deceive you and fool you. But at this particular point, I don't know Greek, I don't know Hebrew, I don't know Aramaic, I don't know Latin. I'll admit it. If I had to do it again, yeah. My parents were they were too young. They didn't handle the family well at all. The family dynamics were just terroristic, to be honest, regarding my position. That's a good way to put it. It was nothing but sheer terror the whole time. I actually enjoyed going to school because it gave me a break from the terror of my dumbass family, to be honest with you. But what my family did not like about me was I asked too many questions and I was too logical. And that upset them because, you see, they want the world to be the way they want it to be. They don't want anybody walking in with a reality check. But that's where America is right now, baby. You all don't have... Biden was your reality check. And you think that everything's going to be okay from here forward because Trump is walking back into the office. I got news for you. He's on the other party, too, on the other team, too. Things are not going to go well here. They are going to get us nuked. The people that are in those offices right now are doing their best to get the Soviets, well, the Russians, to nuke us. And Russia will probably be reduced to having to make that critical decision. Do we do a first strike or do we suffer? So Russia at some point will be backed up against the wall and they'll be forced to nuke us over here. I know. I've gathered information over the years, and the information I may have gathered may have been poisonous plants as well. I don't know. They may have poisoned my mind, so to speak, with the wrong ideas. I may have bought into the wrong things. John Titor supposedly was a fellow from the future, and he described things, and including us getting nuked in the cities, and it wasn't what we thought. Well, the fact is that the most evil country on the planet today carries itself as the United States of America. This isn't America. You have to remember, we have been defeated. We have been taken over. We don't have the founding fathers' structure at all. And the only way to get it back is to go back to the founding fathers' structure. I wish you would join me on that. What do we have to do? Well, I think you better get to know your neighbors. If you don't like your neighbors, then I think you better move. I think you better find a place where you like your neighbors, because you are going to have to throw your lot in with your neighbors. And you're going to want to be a member of your militia, and you're going to want to be a member of your militia in good standing. And the militias are not this crazy ramrod Hollywood bullshit idea that they tried to foist off on us. Not at all. A militia basically is a group of pals and buddies that know each other well enough that when they have difficulties, they turn to each other for advice, and they get good advice. If they need backing, they get backing. If they've been wronged, they get some manpower to join with them so they can confront the person who did the wrong and maybe get some justice. But you're going to have to go back to self-rule. And the founders did not codify the militia adequately. They didn't think we'd ever be without one. They couldn't imagine America without a militia. But that's where we are today. We don't have a militia. This stuff that pretends to be a militia, the state National Guard or whatever it is, or the National Guard, that's not a militia. Yes, it's a military group, but the militia consists of the people. And the problem today is that they brought in so many young men of fighting age, single men, by themselves into the country that are in good shape, that have been trained already. All they're doing is they're waiting for their arms to be delivered, and the CIA will deliver those by the truckloads, fully automatic, selectable fire, no serial numbers. They don't need those. And they'll be having the full-size, standard-size magazines, 30 rounds. And they'll be having plenty of ammunition provided by our CIA. You think I'm kidding? No, I'm not kidding at all. That's what's coming down. There's no hiding from it. You think I'm worried? I know I'm worried that my country is going to be disappearing from the face of the earth. And can I correct it? Can I fix it? Yeah, I can. You want to actually give me a chance? Do you realize how much muscle and firepower it would take to put my ass into office down there? Because I haven't got any deals going with any of those people. I'm not beholden to any of them. They kill us all the time. They just kill me. And they'll just kill Trump, and they'll just kill RFK. They've killed many times before. They have no qualms with killing. I think that I don't see how Trump makes it. I think he gets killed right away. I don't see how he takes office in a way that he can actually neutralize these bastards. You've got Supreme Court justices that are totally compromised and owned by those bastards. They've had justices on the Supreme Court the entire time. Your gift from Joseph Robinette Biden is you got to find out that you don't have a country anymore. You got to find out that America's a laughing stock of the world right now. They laugh at us when they find out who we are abroad and traveling because they know that that we're gone. We're not what we think we are. We are controlled by a minority. And if you look at your FDA, it's nothing but atheistic Jews that don't even believe in God. They're Ashkenazi. They are people who actually prefer to worship Molech. That's what the symbol is on the Ukrainian flag. That symbol is their ancient war banner. It has a specific name to it. I don't remember the name. I'm going to have to look it up. But that little tiny insignia was on every one of their patches on the shoulders of those troops. They all had that little patch from ancient Khazaria on there. And it was a Jewish man who funded those military groups. And that's what the crazy thing was. You had Putin saying he was going in to get rid of the Nazis, and you got Jewish wealthy men who have created these groups of Nazis, just so to speak. I don't like the word Nazi. It never was an appropriate term. It was always a racial slur term formed after the war. Oh, and by the way, but let's look at what that gives us. What's the gift of the Nazi? N-A-Z-I. N-A stands for the front part of the amalgam. The amalgam made between Adolf Hitler, N.A., National Socialist Party, and the Zionist International, the Z.I. Get that from Eustace Mullins. And so you have the Rothschilds who made a deal. We'll bring the United States of America into the war if you give us the Holy Land back again, baby. That's how that happened. And by the way, Germany didn't start the world wars. It was Great Britain that started them. It was the bankers that fomented those wars. They're not what you think they are. Now, I bought this book. It was a little on the pricey side. The British Mad Dog by Mike King. We were friends on Facebook a profile or two ago. And this is the Debunking the Myth of Winston Churchill. His mother was a Jacobin. You ever hear of the Jacobins? They're responsible for the bloody French Revolution, which was a bloody rebellion. That's where he came from. He was a fake Jew, an Ashkenazi. And he got together with our fake Jew, FDR, the Ashkenazi. And along with the Soviet Union's fake Jew, Lenin. Or was it Stalin? It was Stalin. Yeah, it was Stalin. Another fake Jew, another Ashkenazi. And so these three men sit together on a destroyer's deck in the Atlantic, supposedly negotiating for the war and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and everything else on that ship. And what did they have in common? Well, according to the fellow who's head of the ADL, I don't think I can pull it up here, but was there this morning. The fellow who's in charge of the ADL, or was in charge of the ADL, let me see if I can find it. I doubt it. This fellow actually, I don't think anybody's marked it. I don't think anybody's marked anything on this. No, nobody's marked anything on this. Okay, that's great. I don't know what to make with some of these women just trying to get so much attention. I think they're pretty desperate. Look, this is pretty serious. And you need to understand that they really want us dead. They really want to kill us. The same people who killed Christ are occupying the very city in which they crucified him. The truth is no longer hidden. Now people are hiding from the truth. That's why my family didn't like me. I was asking too many questions as a child, and I was right too often. That was a problem. I wish that my parents would have handled things a little bit better than what they did, but they were, as my grandparents said, they were too young. No, I'm not going to pull this up very easily. Oh, beautiful puppy dogs, black labs. Okay. We are dealing with a really horrible enemy, and we are in the last days of this earth age, not of the world, although we could conceivably blow this place up at this point. I want you to understand that the Federal Drug Administration is staffed with a Jew in every serious position. The FDA. The CDC also is the same way. This incoming administration cabinet for President Trump is the same way. Sheldon Adelson's widow, Miriam, is dictating to Trump who he's going to have on his cabinet. So we are literally ruled by Jews. That's all there is to it. But they aren't real Jews now. They aren't Israelites. And I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of people don't accept this when I say it, but there are real Jews who are also Israelites. It's a tiny amount. It's not even 1%. It is a residue. That's the word that's used in the Bible here. And there will be a residue of them left in Jerusalem at the end. That's when Yahweh comes out and fights for them. So you need to understand, everything is being set up in the Middle East for this biblical ending that we're supposed to be having here. It's just wild. They're abiding by this book. Now, I've got friends telling me, well, this was written before by in other books, and these are all borrowed. Now, I don't know. I really don't know. I do know this, that they've tried to alter this book quite a bit and change it subtly, and they've made it illegal to own, to possess, and to read, and all kinds of stuff. And yet, when we read it carefully, it reveals itself to us, but it doesn't reveal itself to the casual reader. Biden gave you a gift. He lets you know that you no longer have a country. There's no borders. He destroyed the borders. He did that. Him and, Barack Obama, who was actually the one running the White House the whole time, who should be strung up, as far as I'm concerned. And yes, Barack Obama is busy now gaslighting people, saying that whenever one party wins, they tend to weaponize the Department of Justice and the FBI and the CIA. Come on, man. You came from the CIA. You're one of their agents. You're their man in the White House. One of the things, at least, that the Roman Catholic Church had going for it was a bit of a separation of powers, a division of labor. And that was that the Jesuit general could not become the Pope. In our country, your CIA directors become the goddamn president. I don't think that should be allowed. But I'm at a point now where I think our CIA needs to be taken apart. I don't think it's going to be very hard to do it, but I think we need to do it soon, because the men who are capable of doing it are getting older and passing. So there are men who understand how the CIA should be taken apart, and I think there's some definite things that have to be investigated there. We need to have the truth about our country. We know the CIA killed Kennedy. They did it for their bankers that run the country. And we also know that the big pharma controls everything. They're the biggest financial trust, independent of everything else. And so we're dealing with stuff that's mapped out in the Bible. We're dealing with a grand deception. I mean, even the people in the big box churches are deceived, being told, you're going to get raptured out of here, baby. You don't have to go through any of this suffering. You're special. You're going to get beamed out of this mess before all hell breaks loose. Come on, man. You really believe that stuff? I don't believe that. I have enough trouble believing somebody died for my sins. I got enough trouble with that. But this idea that they're going to spare me, I don't see that happening at all. Yes, Sodom was much worse in many ways. And if you go back and read the book of Jasher, you find out that they made sport out of going after the stranger that visited them. The stranger that was within their walls when the city gates closed at night. They were trapped there on the streets, and they were picked on. They were really picked on badly. They did all kinds of tortures to those people. And they basically did their best to kill them during the night. So they were horrible. It wasn't just about sodomy. It was about, well, they had the rack there, and if you were too long for the bed that was out in the city square, they'd cut your body parts off to make you fit. Or if you were too small, they would put the ropes on you and stretch you out across it. They had great fun and great sport doing that. So Sodom and Gomorrah were pretty bad places. And Lot was called out of it, and Lot was a judge. He basically sat there in the gates And he was a judge. And I guess he was a decent judge because he was the only one that was escorted out by the angels from the whole place. Him and his children and his wife. Unfortunately, she looked back, and that was it for her. But there's more to the story. Unfortunately, the children, the daughters that he had, were traumatized by the nuclear blast because they witnessed that shit, man, and they didn't know what it was. They witnessed that, and they were up in the mountains thinking they were the only ones left alive, and their father was the last man. Everybody else was dead. How else were they going to have children? So they both got together and come up with a plan. Let's get our dad drunk, and you sleep with him the first night, and I'll sleep with him the second night. And so they fathered two different peoples, which gave the Israelites some grief. But that's all in the Bible. It's there for you to read and you to discover. Back to the issue at hand. What is the gift Biden has given us? Biden has woken us up to the fact that this government is not our government. And I hope that he will wake you up to the fact that you're going to have to start bonding with your neighbors. You're going to have to learn who your neighbors are. You're going to have to form groups, protective groups. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to go off on the rampage. You're going to be able to circle the wagons so that when the natives around you go off on a rampage, you're going to be able to survive it. And the young men are going to need older men to guide them. And hopefully we do a good job of guiding them and not exploiting them, because it's them who are going to be coming to our rescue. Them with their quick senses, their sharp wits, their quick reflexes, their eagle eyes, their ability to hear things, their strength, their ability to snap to and pull a shot off. That's going to be a necessity. That's not going to be for the privileged few. So Biden has woken you up, but I don't think we're woken up to the point where we're going to circle the wagons. What would circle the wagons look like? Well, you'd probably go off into an area and get to know your neighbors, and hopefully you would like each other enough that you would trust each other and you would get to know each other and be there to watch each other's backs. But Americans aren't bonding very well. They did a real good job with COVID bullshit, and they haven't given up on that yet. So you need to understand, this government has not stopped killing Americans. They're killing Americans in the Carolinas as I speak to you right now. They're going to kill more. They killed probably 70 to 80,000 of us in the Carolinas. And you're not hearing that on the news. Why? Because the news is owned by the CIA and controlled by it. They're not going to tell you what they've been doing to you. They're not going to tell you how many people they killed in Hawaii. They're not going to tell you. They're just not going to tell you that. And they're going to keep killing us. They're going to keep doing the weather warfare. They're not going to tell you the truth that they can control those storms from beginning to end. Heck, the reason CENTCOM in Florida survived when that category was a 4 hurricane was coming at it was because they seeded the clouds with a bunch of ice balls. I guess millions of carbon dioxide ice balls, the size of tennis balls, well, golf balls at least. And they broke that storm up before it hit CENTCOM. They've had control over the weather for quite a while. And so they stopped that storm in its tracks. Otherwise, CENTCOM would have been underwater. And they had the hurricanes off from one Doppler radar system to another. So they know exactly how to pull them in and how to guide them. They know how to beef them up, how to concentrate them, how to dissipate them. They know how to do all of that. And then plus in the Carolinas, they didn't just manipulate the storm. They pulled the dams also, causing huge floods. I don't know where else you're going to get the truth. Do I have the truth? I don't know. I think I do. The fact is, Biden gave us a gift. He showed us that we don't have a country. And the rhino Republicans are now showing their asses. And they need to be run out as fast as possible. And I'm not talking about waiting for elections. We don't have time for that anymore. So if you were in a city, you need to get your ass out of it. You need to get yourself someplace where you can circle the wagons. Someplace where you have running water. Someplace where you might have a generator. It would be real nice. You need to have all of this stuff going for you. And it's not cheap. And it's not easy to come by. I happen to know some property that's available up in Colorado if you want to buy it. It ain't going to be cheap, but I'm going to tell you this. It's isolated. It ain't easy to find. It ain't easy to get to. It's got a big structure on it, a steel structure on it. You can grow crops there. It's at a bit of elevation, 20 miles away from the city. And somebody's going to have a rough time finding you or getting up there. It's not totally isolated, but it's isolated enough that emergency vehicles aren't going to be able to get to you. It's isolated enough that even FedEx can't find your ass. And as far as UPS, well, you'll have to probably meet them down in town for that. But it's up in the mountains of Colorado. So it's a lot of acreage. It's a huge amount of acreage. 40 acres, I think. 50 acres. It's pretty big. Anyway. And it's got wildlife on it. It's got elk. It's got deer. It's got bear. And occasionally it gets black Angus. Roams up there too. America was naive, and they played upon America's good spirit of trying to rescue and help others. And at this point, we are not helping others abroad. We haven't been nation building at all. That's a bunch of bullshit. The most important thing we could have done would have been to have stayed home and left those people alone and let them sort out life for themselves right there in their own territory. We needed to stand by and let them do that. That's the way it should be. But we get screwed up and we get admired in these foreign entanglements. So what else did Biden teach us? Well, Biden basically taught us that there's no money, that the way they're doing it is a bunch of magic. They're buying up the debt, the treasury notes, and they're making money out of nothing to do that. So they're keeping the whole flim-flam show going. It's a giant, big Ponzi scheme. And sadly, yes, we do export. We export our inflation. We export our worthless dollars. We export our precious children. Yes, we are sending our babies abroad. Far as I can tell, we export them. There's a big market for it. Biden family was big in on it. They aren't the only ones. There's a lot of others involved in that, right up to your Supreme Court. We used to offer something to the rest of the world, but unfortunately, Henry Kissinger got Nixon to open up trade with China, which was a mistake, but they were working on that for a long time. You see, we interfered in the self-determination of the Chinese people a long time ago. We had just finished World War II, and we wanted to stop the wars at that point. And so when we heard that Chiang Kai-shek was going to invade mainland China, we stationed our 7th Fleet. Our president said, no, you're not going to invade mainland China. And Chiang Kai-shek and his forces were going to win. And we stationed our entire 7th Fleet in the Strait between Formosa and the mainland. And we stopped that invasion from happening, which meant we sentenced the entire Chinese population to communism. You see, the communists have been in D.C. the whole time. I mean, back when they were shouting about the communists in Hollywood, it was real. Back when they shouted about the communists in the State Department, it was real. Joe McCarthy was right, and they did their best. They outflanked him, outmaneuvered him. So I don't have a final solution here, except we need to take our government back, and we need to cut the structure of our government down so it can't happen again. I think we can do that. What do you think? Do you think that we actually maybe could set ourselves up in our counties and say, hey, you're not coming in here unless you support the Constitution? Oh, and by the way, the Constitution starts with the real 13th Amendment on. There's nothing else after that. In other words, they are going to agree to abide by the first 13 amendments, or we're not going to let them in. They're not one of us. That's what it's going to take. And you may think, where'd you get that idea, Dr. Kent? Thomas Jefferson wrote that down a long time ago. He said, if we ever lose the Republic, here's how we get it back. And he suggested we break ourselves into groups of 100 and we take over our counties and we refuse to allow anyone inside who was not sworn to support and uphold the Constitution. Sounds pretty good to me. And I think we have to go a lot further with things. I think we have to force the federal government to use honest money again. And we have to liquidate the hell out of them because they own stuff they shouldn't own. That corporation never should have come into existence. That's one of the most foolish things that we ever allowed to happen in 1871. Only to be surpassed by the Federal Reserve in 1913, by which they stole it all. And they manipulated us into wars, and they cost us dearly. Imagine what this country would have been like if we never had allowed those people to come here. That's right. They came and they took over our Central Intelligence Agency, and they took over our Creative Artists Association out of Hollywood. Remember, he who tells the stories rules the world. So they told you the stories and they made all kinds of bullshit up. So you don't know reality. Do not assume you know anything. Do not assume anybody's going to tell you truthfully about anything. The average young lady under 30 years of age running around this country, in my estimation, has had to prostitute herself. Maybe didn't have to, but chose to. And the average one has been on some sort of opioids at some point. And quite often they're still smoking pot or still doing methamphetamines. There's no hiding those facts anymore. They've destroyed us with their drugs. Don't get me wrong, our founding fathers wrote the Constitution on hemp paper. They had hemp oil back then. Hemp oil was part of the anointing oils described in the Bible, from what I can tell. If you have more info on that, I definitely want to hear it. If I'm wrong, I really want to hear it. So Biden has given us a gift. He has informed us that we no longer have a proper form of government. My take on it is that we can recover it. But it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, and there's going to be some blood spilled, sadly. So, what do I suggest you do? I suggest you repent. I've been praying about my repentance and the repentance of the nation. I can't repent for you. I can't repent for the entire nation. I mean, I can pray for it. I certainly do. The fact is, unless we return to Yahweh, and that means praying for the best determination in all circumstances, and I did that the other day. I was so grateful I did that. I come up with the right solution, and I was able to bow out of the situation in a positive way. And that's where I'm at. It is somebody else's fight. It's not my fight. There's a family involved, and this family needs to be founded. It needs to be established, and I can't establish it. I just suggested to the critical party that she establish it. So hopefully she will establish it, and hopefully she will do as we talked about, and she will just tell the fellow honestly what she's done, where she's at. But don't know what he's able to tolerate at this point. I'm worried about that little tiny baby, though. He needs his family. And I think that the father needs some respect from the mother. I think the mother needs to be honest with him for a change. But who knows? Maybe I'm just being played for a sucker again, another fool. So, I'm going to bag it for right now. Biden was a gift, and the gift was to wake you up. Stop thinking everything's okay just because Trump's been elected. His cabinet's a piece of shit. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And the people that are behind him are the same people that are behind Biden. So we have gone from the frying pan of communism into the fires of Zionism. Yahweh bless.